Hey, welcome everyone to the Resilient Living Podcast. Today, I would normally have Jared with me, but instead, I've got Dakota from Better Built Dogs. How are you doing, Dakota?
Doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. Oh, we got music back again. Awesome. I'm hearing music at least. I don't know if everybody else is. So,
I heard it. I was digging it. We're good.
yeah, it's pretty good. Oh, I am. Oh, I see what's going on. I apologize. That was on my end. I somehow had the YouTube live open and I was getting a awkward. Sorry, everyone. Let's start over. So, Dakota, you're with Better Built Dogs. Tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about what the business is and how you got into it.
All right. So we are a dog training company in West Tennessee, basically dead center between Nashville and Memphis in Jackson, Tennessee, or technically just outside of it. But if you know the area and you know Jackson, that'll give you about roundabout of where we typically serve. And we typically serve within about an hour of that in person. We work with everything from your regular pet dogs to service dogs to protection dogs and law enforcement canines. Uh, how I got into it is I have gone through a whole bunch of stuff in my previous lives doing different stuff and things. I did not have a great childhood and decided I was going to go see a therapist. And my therapist and my primary care physician was like, "Hey, you got some issues, and you should probably consider like looking at like some things to help you, and one of those things might be a service dog." So I started looking at how to get a service dog and found out that they're very, very, very expensive. Typically, a baseline service dog before, like often even before task training, starts out at about $20,000, and I could not afford 20 grand, especially at the time working for like $12, $13 an hour. Not not within the budget.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
you,
understandable. So,
but
what did you do with that?
Well, so what I found out was you can actually train your own service dog. The ADA does not require you to have a actual trainer train your dog, and like training certifications are uh, typically dubious at best. They're typically not worth the paper that they're written on, because I can go and like take a test and be like, "Hey, I'm a certified dog trainer," and give them like $250, and 15 minutes later, I've got a certification.
Right.
Um, it it's not a good way to measure things. Um, but because of that, I was like, okay, well, I'm a pretty intelligent dude. I could probably figure this thing out. So I started looking into like, how do you train for all of those things, whether it's basic obedience stuff or the service tasks that I was needing at the time. Um, and then one of my buddies had a working line German Shepherd and had an accidental litter, and was like, "Hey, if you want a puppy, I got a puppy for you." I'm like, all right, cool, free dog, and I'm starting to learn how to do this training thing. I'm gonna figure this thing out. Um, and turns out I was pretty dang good at it. I don't recommend the way that I really got into the business side of it. It kind of went
Okay.
against like all of the things that you'd normally want to do in business. Um, but because I had my dog trained so well, a bunch of people when we were in public was like, "Oh my God, she's trained so well. Where'd you get her trained?" And I was like, "Hi, it's me. I didn't send her anywhere to get her trained. I did the training myself." And almost every single time, the next question was, "Would you train my dog?" And my answer was absolutely not.
Right.
Um,
And they're just talking like their personal house dog. Is
yeah,
that?
they're just talking personal pets,
Mhm.
um, which it. I mean, dog behavior is dog behavior. Anybody that says that like I can train this breed, but I can't train this breed doesn't know how dog behavior works, and probably shouldn't be sending your dog or working with that person to train dogs. Um, but The way that I went about it was like, nope, absolutely not. Have a nice day. I don't even want to be having this conversation right now.
Sure.
And because I got it so often, honestly, I started getting upset about it and got a little bit kind of spiteful, which shouldn't have done. And was like, yeah, I'll train your dog. And then throughout like what I felt was a ridiculous number for me to
Mhm.
train their dog. Turns out it was severely under like what I even ask now. Um, and for the first couple times, they were like, "Oh, dog training's not cheap." I'm like, no, no, it's not. Um, but really, I'm telling you this number because I really don't want to like take on your dog and you and all of your problems and your dog's problems and all of the other
Right.
things that come along with that. I
'Cause
didn't
you're
realize
not
that
just
I
training.
actually enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, and you're not just training a dog, right? You have to train the human on dog behavior because you can get a dog doing great and then you hand it off to their owner and they go right to the old habits.
Yeah, the vast majority of what I do, even though the title is dog trainer, is actually training people.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and that's cool.
eventually,
I want to dig into that a little bit. Like, how do you help people train their dogs? And we don't have to do it the second, but how do you help train people so that they understand their dog and can actually do the training properly? And so,
so
I
the
guess,
very
go
I'll
ahead.
go ahead and get into it now because I was
Yeah.
basically at the end of that. What it boiled down to was like, hey, um, somebody eventually was like, yes, I will pay you X amount of dollars that you just asked for, and you're gonna help me train my dog to do that thing. And I was like, crap, now I got to figure this out.
Hmm.
So I took that money, started going to seminars, started doing things like canine first aid, canine CPR, basic behavior modification stuff, basic obedience stuff, a whole bunch of bite work stuff. Like just started taking all of that money and rolling it into learning this skill that I found out that I really enjoyed doing. Like
Okay.
not just the bite work stuff, though that's like that is kind of my favorite portion of it, but like I've really enjoyed the whole thing. I really enjoy seeing people and their dogs go from knowing absolutely nothing to being able to be like, all right, cool, we're gonna go ahead and walk down Broadway in Nashville off leash and have a blast.
That's awesome. So, what would be, like in the training the human side, what would you say is the biggest misconception that humans have or the biggest issue that they end up having when training their dogs?
Um, Probably the biggest misconception that they have, and unfortunately, a lot of the industry kind of perpetuates it because it makes them money, is that if you don't change your behavior, the dog is not going to change their behavior.
Okay.
Most of what my job ends up being is teaching you how your dog thinks and what you need to do to manipulate that to get the dog to do what you want it to do, and for it to understand, okay, when I do this thing, they say or do this thing, and this is how I get paid. This is how I enjoy this thing. And it's much better that I do this thing because it becomes way more fun. We become way more bonded, and it's a blast. Um, Unfortunately, there are a lot of companies that will basically give you the feeling of, oh, you send me your dog, because board and trains are like the number one thing that people think of, even though it probably shouldn't be.
Hmm.
But it makes us the most money, so it's going to be the thing that's pushed for more often. Um, you send me your dog for X number of weeks, and I'm going to send you back a trained dog meeting these qualifications. And while that might be technically true, what they don't tell you very often, and I'm very specific to tell people, is that, okay, so now that your dog has the foundation that it needs and it understands these behaviors that we're asking of it, now you have to be able to put that into practice. I need to teach you how to communicate with your dog the same way that we did, so that your dog understands, oh, so like the expectations that these guys were setting is now the same expectation that my person that I'd been with before has been setting. Because unfortunately, if you do the same thing you've always done, you'll get the same thing that you've always got.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes, like, if they've rehearsed a whole bunch of behavior, they're going to try that previous behavior.
Right.
And they're going to push those boundaries. And if you're just like, all right, I'm fed up with it, I'm not playing with it anymore, then they're going to be like, all right, cool, I'm just going to go back doing the same crap that I was doing before I left. And now you're out X amount of dollars, whatever it is that you paid for that trainer to do.
Right. Yeah. And so it seems, at least to me, to make sense that you start with the person. And I don't know if you do this, but one of the things that I think about when I'm doing homestead consulting is I have to think about that person's personality. I have to ask questions. And yes, I'm trying to learn about what they want to do, but I also have to have some understanding of how they think so that I can adjust what I'm saying and what I'm recommending to their situation and how they function. So, do you kind of like, I don't know what else to call it, but profile as you kind of walk into a training situation?
So definitely read the room.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of reading people. And because prior to doing this full time, I actually was working for Walmart and was um, one of the things that I did for Walmart was actually train their managers, like how to do a lot of the stuff that they're doing. And I went through the teaching the trainer courses that they give. So I learned things like there's 3 different ways that people typically learn, and everybody's got a mixture of all 3, but typically one stands out. And that's going to be auditory, visual,
Mhm.
or kinesthetic, which means hands-on. About 80% of people are hands-on, so they have to be able to do it for them to really learn it. Um, but then you also have to be able to read, are they an internal processor where they're going to actually like think about stuff before they say it, or are they like me where like what I'm thinking through is what's coming out of my mouth, and it may not be necessarily me going, hey, this is what's up. It may be me
Right.
working through a problem, which really annoys to the internal processors, by the way.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, that's a funny point because I worked with this guy for years and he couldn't like do a simple math problem without doing it out loud to someone. So he was
mhm.
like an external processor to the extreme. And
Yep.
we always had a fun time with him because he just whatever was like in his brain was like out in the open. And it was pretty entertaining.
So thankfully, I have that background so that I can pull from that. And like
Yeah.
I've trained a whole bunch of people, and I had to manage a whole bunch of people. I was managing a store with 320 employees on average at any given time for more than 3 years. So like I kind of got used to it, and I bring that into it with me.
Yeah. Well, I think realistically, if you do anything that involves other people in your job, which pretty much all jobs do, the way you're going to get better at it is by understanding how to read people, honestly and appropriately to be able to
Mhm.
interact with them and bring a conversation around something that you can both understand.
For sure.
So how do you translate that, like what's an example of doing that with somebody where you see what's a common thing where you see somebody's doing something wrong and the dog's responding poorly because of it?
So there's a couple of ways that we can go about it. The first one is gauging where the client is as far as like, are they frustrated? Are they
Mhm.
getting really frustrated? Um, are are they just not make is like they're just something that's not making a specific connection? And because I've done it enough, I typically can go, hey, try this little tweak and see if that works out for you. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, then we're going to try this next little bit a tweak that's going to see if that's going to give you the better outcome that we're looking for. But ultimately, because I've trained so many dogs at this point, I can kind of see what's going on in the dog's head too. and be able
Sure.
to go, okay, so the dog is thinking this because I've done this before, and this was part of the problem. I just need to get the owner to be able to go, okay, so hold your hand this way instead of this way, and you're going to stop getting your fingers bit.
Sure.
And super basic stuff like that. Like, because I've built so many dogs and I've built so many people, it's usually pretty quick that we're able to start getting people to understand, okay, what are markers? When we say yes, like, what does yes mean? And do they understand what yes means? Do they have a very specific picture in their head with clear criteria? What is sit? What is down? What does place mean? What is a heel? And what does that perfect picture for them look like? Um, Actually defining those things and making sure that they can actually repeat those things back to us helps out a lot, so that they have very, very clear expectations, which makes it a lot easier for them to give that dog very clear expectations, so that sets them up for success.
Yeah. So it's almost like defining terms, but with your dog. Like you.
A lot of it is like,
Mhm.
so dogs don't speak English. They do not come
Right.
out of the womb speaking English. German shepherds don't do better speaking German. Like, they are primarily nonverbal communicators. So,
Mhm.
like, the sounds that you're making with your mouth, for the most part, don't mean jack to them until you tell them what that means. They
Right.
do have a change in pitch that can give some sort of communication, just like you and I have a change in tone that causes different things.
Mhm.
But, like, high pitched usually means excited and not feeling threatened, and low pitch is usually defensive and feeling threatened or threatening. So when you go no, they're like, oh, there was a little undertone of a threat there. I don't know what you said, but you barked at me, and there was an undertone of a threat there.
Right.
Where all of a sudden you're saying like all sorts of horrible things to your dog. You're like, oh my gosh, it's blah, 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 blah. Then they're like, oh, this is great, even though you just told me that I'm super dumb and all of these terrible things are going to happen to me.
Right.
But
Yeah.
they don't understand English.
Yeah. You can say whatever you want. They're mostly listening to tone, but obviously they can to an extent correlate a word with a
Mhm.
thing, whether that's an action or a feeling or a, because obviously I can tell my dog no, and he at least understands that there's something that he's doing that I don't want him to do.
Yep.
Beyond that,
And there that is a thing. Um, and when you start getting them to understand, oh, this sound that they just made with their mouth done this way means I do this thing, and they make that connection, other things start becoming easier.
mhm,
And like, so a lot of people have seen like clicker training where they've got this little clicker and they're like ka-chink, and then they feed them, but a lot of people don't understand like what the theory behind that is and like how to put that into practice. And we kind of do that, but like I use yes as the same thing as most people use for a clicker. I just already carry a bunch of crap anyway. I don't want to carry another thing with me to go ahead and train my dog. But we get down to like super fine details of why, when I have a conversation with somebody and I tell them that my dog is going to be sitting in just a minute or we're going to have them sit, my dog's not sitting. My dog doesn't sit down because it's the way that you and I are having a conversation is not the same way that I talk with my dog.
right,
When I tell my dog to sit, it's sit, exactly like that, with that little like upward tonal. And when I tell them to down, it's down with that downward tonal. And that, over the course of a couple of months of them basically being habituated to that, understanding what that sound means and what that tonal pitch changes means, I can communicate with my dog over 100 yards away, and they may not be able to hear this on the actual sound, but they understand
sure,
that tone change. And they can go, okay, cool. He said, do this thing. We're going to do that thing.
right. Yeah, so you can communicate over a much longer distance, and it's interesting to hear about. What does a dog hear? What does it think? And what parts of it does it actually take in?
So typically speaking, the first thing that it hears is usually what it tries to associate with. So like if I were to say Platz, which is the German down essentially, and place, often if I try to teach them English and German and I teach place at with plots, like
Mhm.
they may do one or the other because what they're hearing is that first pla, and you can actually habituate them to, as soon as they hear pla, they're like down, or they're running to place, uh, and that just sit without the T on the end of it will usually get them to sit, so long as it's done the same way. And that's a trick that a lot of like competition obedience trainers do, so that they start habituating the dog that it looks like their dog is running faster than it is, but it's because that sound ended way before their actual mouth stopped making it, so the dog was already processing it and putting it into motion.
Okay, that's interesting. Um, so I know we talked about this before when we met a few weeks ago at Kentucky Sustainable Living. But you had mentioned having a little bit of a different approach than some trainers. Um, Obviously, there's probably other people who have your approach as well. But what would you say is unique about your approach, or what kind of differentiates one from another?
Um, so generally speaking, this is a gross
Alice, leave them
generalization.
alone. Henry, no.
I understand. As a gross, yeah. Everybody
That is
heard.
actually
Everybody
my
heard
dog.
Henry's is no.
Yeah, that is my dog. And my daughter is currently, she was chasing some ducks, and my dog thought it'd be fun to get on the duck chasing bandwagon. So I meant to hit my mute button, but I did not.
You're good.
So
You're good.
Henry got to know.
That I understand. So typically speaking, there is three overarching views of dog training. Um, One that you'll hear a lot about is positive only,
Mhm.
or force free. They're basically the same camp. You'll have compulsion, which is like the old school yank and crank. Like, I'm gonna make you do the thing, put a choke chain on the dog and start yanking it around, and pressure comes off when the dog listens. Um, it's a whole lot of pressure on, pressure off stuff. And then balanced, which is like the middle road of all of that, which is typically where I lie. Um, it allows us to go, okay, this is what this dog needs, and that's the way that we're going to go about training this particular dog. So I train the dog that's in front of me, not the dog that I wish that I had or the dogs that I've had in the past. Just because, like, yes, I'll use a prong collar as an example. Just because I've used a prong collar on a couple of my German Shepherds or a Malinois doesn't mean that I'm going to put a prong collar on every dog, because quite frankly, not every dog needs it. There
Right.
may be some cases where I'm going to go, okay, we've been working at this thing, and this tool is going to get a better outlook based on these qualifications. In the long run, this is going to be a better option for us to get where we need to go in the time frame that we need to get there. Or in some cases, like, this person has to have this because without it, there's no way that this dog is going to be able to be controlled by them, because that tool is a force multiplier when used appropriately. Um, and then going out of my way to make sure that people aren't jerks and causing actual, like, potentially mental harm to the dogs, because I don't discriminate against tools. I don't care. Like, as long as it's the right tool for that dog and that handler, that's what we're looking for.
Right.
Unfortunately, just like firearms, there's a lot of things that are equated to the tool being a problem and not the actual person using the
Using.
tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, because I could
And that can be a
see,
thing.
I could definitely see prong collars being wildly misused, and especially if the
Mhm.
dog is confused about what they're being told, and you're giving them a pop, and they're like, "What did I do?"
Mhm.
That could be a real issue.
Um, and it's the same thing with e-collars. Like all when we were there at KSL, like my dogs are all off leash. Like my personal dogs are all off leash. Um, but they do have an e-collar on them. Now, that being said, Fiona's e-collar was dead half the time that we were there.
It's
Because I
just the
was a
threat,
dummy and
right?
forgot to plug it in. No, it has nothing to do with a threat.
Well, I mean, like
Has
they
nothing to do
know
with
that
the
it's
threat.
on,
Nope.
or they know
Nope.
that no. Okay,
I go out of my way to make sure that they are not e-collar smart. That
okay.
they're not like, oh, the thing is on. No. I want you to listen because you know that you're supposed to listen. And when you listen, good things happen.
Hmm.
And like you get access to go do super cool stuff. Like I tell you, you can break and you can run down a cattle corral and like go play with little kids and like jump up on tables and like do cool stuff that most people's dogs can't do.
Yeah,
Like you get freedom because you've earned that freedom and you listen. But if you don't listen, then there is a consequence to that as well. And thankfully, with my dogs, for the most part, I just have to tell them, that's not what I'm looking for,
hmm,
and they're like, okay, cool, I'll figure this out. I very rarely tell my dogs no because no means something very specific,
hmm,
and when I say no, it's like a nuclear bomb went off. It's
sure.
like, oh no, this is a big problem. Like I never want to hear that sound as far as my dog is concerned. Uh, because it like your words have as much power as you enforce them to have, whether it is positive or, and when I say positive, I mean in the way that we view positive, or negative in the way that we view negative being bad. When I start talking about like the four quadrants of operant conditioning and I start talking about like positive reinforcement, most people don't know the clinical definitions of that. So we're not speaking the same language until I define those terms.
Yeah, no, definitions of terms is absolutely vital in communication, and that's kind of, it seemed like you kind of hit on that with the dogs too. It's like you're
Mhm.
defining terms in some ways.
We are. And we basically, over the course of, at first a couple of weeks, but over the course of their life, like we have basically created a contract of, hey, when this sound is made, you do this thing. When you don't do that thing, this sound's going to happen. And then this is the consequence that's going to happen. It's very, very repeatable and very, very clear. And when they have that really like defined line of like good is good and bad is bad, they have the ability to be successful. And it's the same, it's the same thing with kids.
Mhm.
When dad says, hey, don't do that, it means don't do that. The difference is our kids have the opportunity to go, oh, so like you say don't do that because why? Okay, because when dad says don't touch the stove, it's hot. If I touch the stove, it's going to burn me, which I probably have already learned, but you know, we're able to have that conversation. But you can't have that same conversation with your dog.
Right. Yeah. I've got a question here from Vic at Rocky Pines. He says, for a Q&A, if there is one, I have a Mount Croix mix.
Hmm?
Is that how you say that?
Mountain cur. It's
Mountain
a mountain
cur.
cur.
Okay. Okay. Very deeply suffering track hunting dog. Sniffing, tracking, hunting dog. How do we get the dude's attention when he's focused on sniffing something out?
So the very first thing that we do is we put a collar and a leash on that dog to ensure that we have the ability to reach out and touch our dog.
Mm-hmm.
It's the very first thing that we do. If you go, hey, pay attention to me, and you don't have the ability to like reach out and go, hey, tap you on the shoulder or pulling your head over, like then that's your first failure in communication. Um, until you have that reliability on leash, I don't take dogs off leash. Like the because we want to teach that communication so quickly. Like I just don't have dogs without a leash on for typically the first 2 weeks that we have them. As soon as they come out of a crate or out of the kennel, if they're hanging out around the house, we've got a little leash on them on a collar. Even little puppies, I'll let them drag a leash around and like
Mhm.
be able to reach out if they want to try to run around and do dumb stuff. We're going to be able to catch them and go, nope, that's not what we're looking for. We're going to not have them repeat that behavior. Now with your mountain cur, that is a very intrinsically rewarding behavior for that dog. So you have to have that ability to reach out and touch the dog. The very first thing that I would do would be a leash. After that, then we're looking at, once we have the ability to communicate effectively and the dog understands, hey, this is what we're doing. When dad says come here, you come here. It doesn't matter that you're doing this other thing. You are going to come to me. It's not a request. And we have the ability to put that in place. Then we start going off leash and have the ability to do it with an e-collar on a very low level to where it basically just feels like it's a tap. So like on our the mini educator, which is the collar that we typically recommend, it's about $200. It's 100% worth every freaking penny. It's way better
Dakota,
than any of the.
I'm sorry. I'm going to be right back. Please keep explaining this. I
You're
have a
good. You're good, bud.
child issue.
I got you. So we're gonna have the ability to reach out and touch that dog one way or the other until that dog has earned the actual freedom and the trust that comes along with being able to go, hey, I need your attention. You need to listen to me. This is what we need to do. And if you can't do that, then the dog hasn't earned that freedom and shouldn't be moved to go, all right, cool. You have all of the free reign. Without trust, none of the other stuff works. If you can't trust your dog, then you need to have a way to be able to enforce that thing in the short term so that we can get to the point where you can enforce it in the long term, but at a distance.
Cool. Thank you for covering for me.
You're good, bud. Is everything all good? That's all I care about.
Yes. No, my daughter decided to chase ducks to put them in a tractor, and I told her not to, and she wasn't listening. So, anyways, kids.
Accountability had to be held. I understand. I got you.
Yep.
Yeah.
You
gotta be able to reach out and touch them.
That's right. Yeah, they know when you can't get to them, and they don't want to listen.
Yep.
So what would you say is the difference between training, like just a homestead dog or training a dog to do well in the home as opposed to, like a working dog or a protection dog?
So typically speaking, especially in the puppy stage, I let protection dogs and like law enforcement dogs be absolutely wild. Like the good presentable, like I'm a good boy is not at all what I am enforcing as a puppy. With a working dog, a working dog and a pet dog are two different things. And the reason for that, like, for example, like I want a working dog to jump up on anything, anywhere. If I go, hey, come up here, do that thing. I want them to have from a very, very young age, very, very confident, and being able to go, okay, trust. They said do this thing. I'm gonna go wild out. It's gonna be a great time. And they're typically like intrinsically kind of like the mountain cur very much wants to sniff and do that kind of stuff. They are typically also like, I'm gonna go do some crazy stuff and it's gonna be awesome. And they find that very positively rewarding, just intrinsically. But where the working dog, I'm going to have them be intentionally wild as a puppy and then teach them behaviors and then slowly rein them in so that they understand, hey, in this context, we said no, but it doesn't mean that you don't ever do that thing. Where with like a pet, I'm typically going, hey, don't jump up on us. You sit right there. Don't jump up on the table. Don't jump up on the counters. Like, I don't want your nose going up and like counter surfing and doing all that kind of stuff. Like all of the good dog stuff in the short term goes out the window with a working dog. and we have to put a whole lot more of whole lot more manners on a pet dog a lot sooner,
Hmm.
um, just so that they have that predisposition of, oh, like I probably don't want to jump up on cars. I probably don't want to jump up on tables. It's not rewarding for me, even though I might find it fun. It's not actually rewarding for me to do a lot of the behaviors that we would consider bad. Um,
Sure.
the the other thing that's probably a big difference is, generally speaking, pet dogs have a lot less drive and a lot less energy and motivation, the vast majority of them anyway. Um, so it's sometimes actually harder to work with a pet dog than it is to work with like a high drive Malinois or German Shepherd or Dutch Shepherd, or like a field bred lab or golden retriever. Something that's like meant to be worked typically has like a lot of motivation that you can pull from, and you can like point that if you know how to point it in the right direction to do the right thing. But like a super, super, super lazy pet line lab that's just like, the only thing that I want to do is lay right here in the floor at your feet. Like, how do you teach that dog that it needs to like go run over there? And like,
Hmm.
it's rewarding to do that thing. Doesn't care about food, doesn't care about toys. It doesn't really care about getting pet. It's just like, I just want to be lazy. Kind of like lazy people. How do you motivate them to do that? Sometimes that's harder.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's interesting too, I guess to me, letting a puppy kind of be crazy and not necessarily trying to, um, incite this understanding and manners essentially early. That's kind of a foreign concept to me because I've had a couple of hunting dogs that I trained and bird dogs. One of them he ended up being a great dog, but when we got him at 2, he'd been trained to do everything like he knew what the commands meant, but trained to like it was fun to do the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I've trained dogs and had decent success at it, but never really thought of the idea of like a service dog or a protection dog or a police dog being something that you don't necessarily train that into them in the same way.
Now, so I'll just use jumping up on people as an example, right?
Mhm.
So like with a dog that's going to do protection work and is going to be biting people on the arms, they're typically smaller, right? So they
Mhm.
normally have to come up. Because they have to come up, oftentimes they have to put paws on you. And if
Right.
you teach a dog at a young age, hey, don't put paws on people, that's not cool. Then very often, and especially when like we're talking about law enforcement, like if they need to go and get somebody and they go, hey, I need you to bite right here and hold that sucker. So post up and be ready to do the thing. If you've trained that dog to be apprehensive of doing that,
Mhm.
then they may not have the mental clarity and confidence to go, okay, in this context, I'm going to do this thing. And in that context, I'm not going to. Eventually, we usually will get to the point where we have that control. But as a little like 8 week to 6 month old puppy, we typically don't do that because I don't want their first thought to go, oh no, I'm going to get in trouble for jumping up. I want them to be full commitment, like, hey, we're going to go do this thing.
Sure. And I'm guessing, but tell me if I'm wrong, when you're dealing with a training essentially from a puppy up for a dog that's going to stay in a home, um, I would assume, do you start with a leash? Where do you start when you're dealing with a puppy that's going to be on the homestead or just generally a house dog?
So 100% of the time, we start with a flat collar and a leash, typically
Mhm.
a 5 to 6 foot leash. And anytime that dog is out from an 8 week old puppy to when they start learning the sounds that we're making with our mouth, and they start actually reacting to those things, then we may consider taking them off leash or adding different things. but always it's going to be a flat collar and a leash. That's number one thing. If you have a problem with your dog or you want your dog to do the right thing, you're going to use a flat collar and a leash. That is negative reinforcement because it doesn't allow that dog to run out and do whatever the heck it wants. Like, for example, chasing ducks without us having the ability to go, hey, that's not what we're looking for.
Right.
Now, a livestock guardian dog would be a little bit different, typically speaking, because we want them to pair with the actual animals that they're working with.
Mm-hmm.
But like people dogs, whether it's a pet or anything else, every time we're going to start with a flat collar and a leash, and we're going to start teaching that dog what it needs to do to be successful, and get a whole bunch of repetitions on what does success look like. And really, for most people, it's 2 10-minute sessions a day
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of weeks. 2 10-minute sessions a day. This is what sit looks like. This is what down looks like. If I want to be able to send the dog away from me and jump up on stuff like you saw at KSL, where we say place and they run and go do the thing, like that's what we taught them at a very, very young age. And same thing with, hey, I teach you to heel with me, to walk next to me, and I can teach you when it's okay to go and be free. But all of that, like all of the off leash freedom, starts on leash, because I don't want them to learn a whole bunch of bad behavior that they found intrinsically rewarding. That's going to take me longer to break just because I'm going to be working smarter instead of harder than that if I can. And with that ability of negative reinforcement, I can control that. We can build that trust together. And then once we have that trust, then we can go and conquer the world. It's going to be great.
Cool. Got a question here from the audience. What considerations would you have for adopting a Malinois that was trained for bite work? Is it even worth considering? And
so it depends. It's going to depend on the dog. Just because the dog was trained for bite work for a period of time doesn't mean that it was good at that thing. Doesn't mean that it found it intrinsically rewarding. In some cases, like that is something that I would absolutely recommend that certain dogs are doing just because they find it very rewarding. They find it fun. It helps burn off some energy for them, and allows them to like clearly channel drive. Especially if you have a good decoy that knows what the heck they're doing and like they're actually working the dog appropriately. But it very much depends on the dog.
Yeah, the question does specify, I didn't read it, but that they don't care to do bite work.
Yeah, if you don't care to do bite work, it may not be a problem. But like the very first things that I would be looking at is, what is the dog's sociability levels? Are they social with other dogs? Are they social with people outside of the home? Are they not social with people outside of the home? Are they not social with kids at all? Because in some cases, they're not. Herding breeds in particular tend to want to chase things. And if you've got little kids, that may not be what you're looking for you to live with your home. Quite frankly, the vast majority of people shouldn't be getting Malinois. Now, if you've already got 2 presses, one, you've already got a bunch, like you got a handful there with 2 presses. Good news is it means you're not soft, but like, do you want to take on a high drive dog that very likely needs to be mentally worked every single day? Otherwise, they're going to tear up a bunch of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
and that is the unfortunate part with those dogs in particular, is like those dogs, you have to work them. If they are a Malinois that is bred to be worth a crap, you have to work their brain. Like, they don't need to run 10 miles a day. You can own them in an apartment if you're not a dummy, but like they have to have their brain worked more than anything else. And if you can't do that and you don't care to take the time every day to do training, you probably shouldn't get that dog. Now, I have met some that are pet quality that don't necessarily need that. But I would at first plan for the exception of the rule not being what I'm probably getting. and see if that fits your lifestyle. If it doesn't fit your lifestyle, maybe not do that thing.
Yeah,
If
a
it
little bit of a
does,
Murphy's Law thing going on there. It seems like. Um, the other thing is, I this is something I do with people a lot is ask the question, why, right? Why?
mhm,
What is the purpose in taking on these two dogs? Is it because it's just pure opportunity? They're trained dogs, and that's kind of exciting to get free trained dogs. I mean, do they have a use? Are you trying to give them a good home? What is your purpose in doing it? Really helps answer the question, should I?
100%. And I would be very careful that you are not saying yes to this dog because you feel bad and
Mhm.
you are now degrading your quality of life to hopefully give this dog a better life, because a lot of times that does not work out successfully.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, a lot of us we see, oh, what's her name? Sarah McLachlan, singing a song for sad puppies, and
Mhm.
we think we
Yep.
should adopt every dog we see. And obviously there's good in that. There's good in taking care of dogs that otherwise aren't going to have a good life, but at the same time, what is your purpose and what is your capacity and what are you going to do with them? Are questions you need to answer or ask and answer before, determining if it's a good idea or not.
Yeah, just because the dog's I will say just because the dog is trained in bite work doesn't mean, honestly, doesn't mean crap to me. Or has been trained previously in bite work doesn't mean a whole lot to me. When it comes down to it, I care, is the dog social? Is the dog confident? Do they fit in with our lifestyle? Is that something that we want to take on? This is the much more direct way to answer that question. So I apologize. The first one was very roundabout. But it may be something that dog needs. It very well might not be. If you don't care to do bite work, cool. Maybe you just want to go out and run trails, or go out and like do paddle boarding or something like that. Cool. And if that's great, awesome. If it's not, then you may need to go. That dog may need to go somewhere else. And not all dogs need to be in your home.
Yep. Yeah. So this is the Homestead twins who had asked the question. Um, I'd be trying to give it a good home from a bad situation. Owner is going to jail for a long time. Thanks, Dakota, for the great answer. So yeah, I think
Yep.
I think that's we talked about what would be your consideration then. Now that we know you're trying to give the dog a better home.
And if it
So
and if the situation's right for you, sweet. If it's not, cool. But like, don't. I would just caution you not to be doing it out of hopium.
mhm.
Like,
Yeah, for sure.
make sure that you're being realistic on this thing, so that you don't absolutely turn your life upside down trying to be good for another life form.
Yep. And not to read too much into it or judge anybody. If the previous owner is going to jail, maybe not, but they could be that they're not. They may have done bite work, but it's trained into the dog in a wrong way that could be a liability as well, I would think.
100%. And just because somebody has worked bite work with me 3 or 4 times, like I've come over 3 or 4 times, and like it's not worked out for the dog, but they're gonna tell people that the dog is trained in bite work. It
Sure.
doesn't mean that they're actually like really trained. They have no idea what the heck they're doing at that point still.
Right. What are some practical ways that dog owners can, your average dog owner can just kind of connect with their dog as well as improve obedience and responsiveness and communication without necessarily turning to a, dog trainer?
Well, the number one thing that they can do is understand dog psychology. Um, and understand it's actually the same thing that we use for people. Whether it is, if you've taken a psychology 101 course, you've heard the term operant conditioning. which then goes positive reinforcement, positive punishment, negative punishment. What are those things? How does that actually play in? And then understand that your dog is the one that gets to choose, like, was that thing positive reinforcement, or was that thing negative punishment, or was it positive punishment? There are, I have dogs currently in my home that, like, if they bite me and I smack them around a little bit, they're like, "Oh my god, this is great." Like, me smacking that dog on the side, they consider it to be positive reinforcement. But, like, another dog would be like, "Oh no. Oh no, dad's mad." And they're like,
Right.
That's positive punishment." Um, Honestly, without a dog trainer, you you're I would be very, very hesitant to just be like, "Hey, this is the thing that you should do." I would go and look at good dog trainers putting out good dog training content that actually explains some stuff. I'll throw out a couple of names just for people if they want to look, but like Haz Oathman from Shield Canine, Oscar Mora from Elevated Canine, or Michael Ellis. Um, do a whole lot of dog theory. And when you look at their basics of like puppy training, they'll explain a lot of the things that I just mentioned in a way that you'll be able to understand it, so that you can start going, okay, first we're going to start with positive reinforcement. What does this dog find positively reinforcing that they are going to go, okay, when you do this thing, I'm going to make this sound, and then this consequence is going to happen, and you're going to enjoy it. And making that sharp line of good behavior is good and bad behavior is bad. When I do this thing and they make this sound with their mouth, this consequence is going to happen. And I feel like that's a bad thing. I don't want more of those. I want more of those. Let's do this more often. And if you can make that line super sharp of good behavior being good and bad behavior being bad, that is where clear communication happens in their terms. Because again, they don't understand English until you teach them what the sounds you're making with your mouth mean.
Right.
You have to be able to communicate in their language, which often is physical, whether it's I'm getting good things or I'm having to be physically corrected, which, by the way, there's no such thing as like force free in the real world. Dogs will correct each other all of the time. It's not cruel and unusual punishment unless you're just being a jerk about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you don't understand what you're doing and you're miscommunicating, but they're getting in a lot of trouble, or you're being overly forceful, that's obviously an issue. But yeah, I mean, that's how one dog says I'm the alpha to another is, or, don't do that or whatever is going to be a physical, it could be a bark, I suppose, but it's generally they're going to have nonverbal communication for the most part.
It is primarily nonverbal. I'll use Fiona and Monarch, which you've met both at KSL,
Mhm.
right? If another dog runs up on Fiona, she is going to get really rigid and be like, "Is this a problem? Because if it's a problem, it can be a problem. Like, are we cool? It's based on what you're doing."
Mhm.
Where Monarch has never met a stranger, whether it's people or dogs. She is usually so far forward and like social that it's almost it can be taken by other dogs as being disrespectful,
Sure.
because it's so aggressive. It's so much aggressive love, um, that it can be taken that way. And like, dogs have to understand, hey, this is what that looks like, and they will act accordingly, just like we do. Some dude postures up in a bar, which I don't recommend going to bars. 100% of bar fights happen at bars. Don't do that. But if you go into a bar and dude's like, "Hey, what's up?" You're like, "Okay, I understand what you're trying to convey." Where if I'm just sitting back and just hanging out like I am right now, like, okay, dude's chill, everything's fine. Like, you will read those things too.
Yep. Rocky Pines, Vic here says, So you're predestined to work with dogs with your last name.
You're not wrong.
And then he says, Lobato. How do you say your last name?
Lobato.
Lobato means wolfing. Is that correct?
Wolfling or wolf cub is
Wolfling.
roughly what it translates to.
Cool. Yeah. That's awesome. You'd mentioned training and resources. Were you going to be coming out with some resources for training for people online?
So I have to a small degree. There for a long time, I did like a nightly TikTok, but that was all that I did, like for almost a year. Every single night at 8 o'clock, I would hop on TikTok. That's 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. Like if you're a real American in the right time zone. Um,
Like you
and,
and I
and
are naturally.
yeah. And I would get on and people would ask questions and I would show exactly what I'm talking about, how you do this thing, how you do that thing. And to a degree, at some point, I'll probably pick that up and do that. But like as it sits right now, I am thankfully successful enough that I don't have the time to sit down and do that all the time while still being able to like take care of my kids and spend time with my fiance and like do all of that stuff. At some point I might, but when it comes down to it, like if somebody needs help, I'll help them. If somebody needs to give me a call and figure something out, like we'll do that. I can train people all over the world. Like the way that we're doing it right now, I can set up a camera in my living room the same way that I did TikTok videos and go, hey, do this, mark this. This is how we're going to do this thing. And this is how your dog is reacting. And I can see that in real time and give them real time feedback. If they want to do that, we can do that. If they're just having a really weird issue going on, and they just need to give me a call and talk something out, my phone number is on the internet. Like the business phone number is on the internet. The good news with that one is if you're a weirdo that's like doing real dumb stuff, I can just hit the block button and I don't have to hear from you anymore. But thankfully, I don't have to deal with that more often than not.
Yeah. When you have kind of a set philosophy and you figured things out, usually a lot of those people who are difficult drop off.
To a degree, yeah.
Yeah. Just the other thing I've found is in business, if you set your price right, you also get a lot of those people who were a problem dropping off because they're, the price shoppers, the people who always want a deal, and it's not wrong to want a reasonable price on something, but knowing what a reasonable price actually is important too.
Yeah, if somebody wants to pay Petco prices and go and sit in a room and like basically learn nothing, and your dog might learn sit out of the whole thing for 3 weeks, cool, you can do that. If you want to get what you pay for, then you can spend a little bit more and you can have a competent professional that like knows what the heck they're doing and can show it. Sometimes this is accurate. Like our dogs are our resume. If we're doing our job, our dog is our resume. Just like if a personal trainer is a really good personal trainer, like they probably look good, almost certainly, because that's what they do.
Right.
And now at this point, because I've been doing it long enough and I get people that's like, hey, I'm thinking about getting a dog in a year. What do I need to start looking at? I'm like, cool. So you're actually thinking ahead. I like you. I'm going to work with you a whole lot. And I work with a lot of problems that people have started having. And like, I'm the emergency contact essentially. And that's okay too. What I don't do is I don't do exactly what you were talking about, which is I'm not Walmart. This is not Petco or PetSmart. Like, you're not going to get some cookie cutter crap. You're going to get a purpose built thing specifically for you and your dog, because not all dogs are the same. We have to train the dog that's in front of us, not the dog that we wish that we had.
Right. Well, man, I think that's probably a pretty good note to start kind of wrapping up on, did you have anything else that you thought like people should know or understand about dog training that you didn't get a chance to mention yet?
Um, so a couple of things I'll probably mention is like myths that
Mhm.
get perpetuated. Like Cesar Millan is one of the biggest dog trainers as far as like the common culture is concerned. Um, Alpha theory is not really necessarily a thing. Like there's leadership for sure, but like
Yeah.
it's not alpha. Um, there's ways to handle things and ways not to handle things. Yes, you can be a jerk, and sometimes that's going to be effective, but not every technique is the right technique for every dog. If you want cookie cutter, you're going to go to a box store like that. That's what it comes down to. Um, I'm trying to think. There's other common myths. Tools aren't bad. I mentioned that one. Genetics. Genetics absolutely freaking matter. You will hear people say it's not about the breed, it's about how you raise them. You'll often hear that from like bully breeders and stuff like that. No, it's both.
Mhm.
Absolutely every single time it is both. There is a reason that certain dogs find certain things to be more intrinsically valuable than other dogs, and that is genetics. That happens as soon as the sperm hits the egg. And there are certain things that like we look for to do particular jobs where if that's not in that dog, it may not be able to do that job. Now, every single dog can do sit down, place, and heel with you. Like basic obedience stuff, every single dog can do it. But not every single dog is going to be actively able to hunt and fight humans. Not every single dog is going to be able to do things like alert to diabetic seizure or diabetic attacks, whether it's high or low blood sugar, or alert to seizures, or be the right dog to be in public. Like it is not all in how you raise them. How you raise them does have a very large effect, but it is also a genetic thing that happens. I equate it to the foundation of a home. I can make a really awesome foundation out of concrete, do a really nice footer, and like have it big enough that I can do a lot of cool stuff on that foundation. But like, if I'm just like, hey, I'm going to throw a couple of posts in the ground and we're going to try to build a skyscraper out of this thing, it ain't going to work.
Right. Yeah, that's not the purpose of what you did or what you have. So yeah, that
Right.
that makes sense. I mean, um, just like humans, we all have the things that we're intrinsically better at than other people, or worse at than other people. Like I'm terrible at reading, but I'm really good at a lot of other things, right? And so when you're
Were
looking at
you
your
born to
at a,
math?
what's that? Oh,
Were
more
you
into
born to
math.
math?
Yeah, well, yeah, I certainly like math better than reading because it makes more sense. um, but yeah, systems thinking is something my brain does when I think of like I see how different things tie together, and that's kind of my superpower. And a lot of people that doesn't click, and that's fine. You know, that's where each of us have our own role and the things that we can do well. And when it comes to dogs, it makes sense that dogs are, breeding really does matter. You know, one dog, basic obedience, all dogs should be able to do. That makes sense as well, that, they should be able to do and they should know it. But training a basset hound is probably going to be a little bit harder than training a lab, because, but you should be able to do it with both,
Generally
right?
speaking, yes.
Yeah. Um,
Generally speaking.
Yeah. And obviously within labs, you're going to have a huge amount of difference as well, or any breed.
So another couple things I'll mention. If you've ever heard of littermate syndrome, which you probably haven't,
I've
but
heard the term, but I don't know what it refers to.
Okay, so littermate syndrome is from a non-scientific standpoint, but they make it sound very scientific. It's basically you getting two dogs of essentially the same age where they grow up together, but they haven't had boundaries and they haven't like had individualized attention. So they bond together and they are just terrors to everything. And they've been allowed to be jerks the entire time.
Hmm.
What it boils down to is littermate syndrome is the consequences of letting your dog go do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, however it wants with its buddy, and is absolutely avoidable and not actually a thing. It's the consequences of you allowing that dog just to be a jerk.
Sure.
Um, that was, we got two dogs at one point and I posted them in a couple of Facebook groups, and like the entire Facebook group of all of these blue-haired grannies were like screaming in littermate syndrome. And I'm like, you don't understand. No, like you can say, hey, there's been scientific studies that like this is a thing, and like technically, yeah, you did a scientific study where you allowed the dog to do whatever it wanted, and it decided that it could do whatever it wanted because that was what you let it do.
Right. Yep, that makes sense. Awesome, man. Well, could you give people kind of your, let them know what your business is, how they can get a hold of you, and maybe just a little bit about, what services you offer that might actually be beneficial to people who might watch.
Yep. So hi, I'm Dakota. I'm half of the Better Built Dogs team. Everything you can find us on, whether it is TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all of this stuff, including the .com. Everything is Better Built Dogs, and our branding doesn't suck because of it, which is great. So we're
That's
really
awesome.
easy to get a hold of. If you have any questions, feel free to hit us up, whether it is on an email form from the website, shoot me a text message on the work phone, or give me a call. Totally welcome. Please don't call me past 8 o'clock, or I'm going to hit the decline button because I've got like other things to be doing at that point.
I mean, that's just
I'll
rude.
get back to you when I can. Yeah. It's kind of like when we were kids. You're like, hey, don't call somebody before 8 a.m. and
Mhm.
don't call somebody after 8 p.m.
Yep.
I don't know that they have those manners being taught anymore, but like I'm of that age where it was taught to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and enforce it. And if you don't like it, I don't care.
Nice. Good. Yeah, and we'll have Dakota's information in the show notes on all of the platforms. So you can scroll down and find all of his links to the different social media as well as his webpage.
Yep. And we train literally every single dogs, all breeds, ages, sizes. We do it in person if you're in West Tennessee, but I can also train dogs virtually and have trained dogs in the UK, in Canada, all across the US. And we've been pretty successful at all of those things. If you don't feel like you have the time to actually train your own dog, even though we do say that you only really need 10 minutes a day, or 10-minute sessions a day, if that's not fast enough for you, we do offer board and trains where you send us your dog, we take them for a specified amount of time and work on the things that we have said that we're going to work on, and then return your dog back to you with the foundation on it so that you can then go back and start putting in additional work, and making sure that you work with your dog the way that you need to do. That is a requirement for working with us. If you're not going to put in the work, I'm not going to put in the work.
That makes sense. Yeah, you don't want to put in the work to train a dog and then have the person get it back and just not keep up with it.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't hate money. If you're going to throw money at me, that's fine. But when it comes down to it, what I'm sending back to you is a product. And if you are not treating that product appropriately, you're not going to get the use out of that product that you were asking for. And then you're going to think that I'm a jerk. So I'm just not going to do that.
Right. One last comment here from Pack Rabbit. Oh, does our modern society suffer from littermate syndrome?
Yes, yes, they do. You should bring spanking back to children. You should start teaching consequences. You absolutely Psychology 101 says that when you do good things and you get rewards for it, that behavior is more likely to happen. And when you do bad stuff and you get negative consequences for that action, you stop doing that behavior as often. Like, that's science. You absolutely, like, bring back spankings, bring back, like, gentle parenting is absolutely BS.
Mhm.
Not that there's not a time to be soft with your children, but there's not all of the time. And definitely they are screaming in littermate syndrome. Look at the internet, you'll see a whole bunch of stupid stuff all over the Facebook, internet, YouTube, Twitter, all of the stuff.
Yeah,
Blue
I mean,
Sky,
it's
I
a
guess, is one.
no, it's a simple
I'm not on Blue
point.
Sky.
If you essentially allow children to do whatever they want in this gentle parenting, like, it, yeah, you're going to get littermate syndrome. Pack Rat
Yep,
has it right there. It's the
100%.
same psychological phenomenon where you're essentially creating something or someone that has, in some way, they're not psychopathic, but the tendency is kind of being built in because there's no consequence for treating other people badly or other, things badly.
Yep. Yep. When you are taught your entire life hitting is bad, and somebody decides that they're going to go ahead and be a jerk, and hitting is not getting punched in the mouth is not an acceptable consequence for doing really, really bad behavior, then of course you're going to get more of that bad behavior that they find intrinsically rewarding.
Sure. Awesome. Well, I think I'm going to give my information. I'm the homestead consultant. I help people set up homesteads and figure out the best way to do that. I also teach classes and things. So if you're local and are interested in having me for like your homesteading group or farming group or homeschool group or whatever to teach a class, I do that as well. You can find my information at thehomesteadconsultant.com. And if you just search the Homestead Consultant on places like YouTube or Instagram, you can find my information there as well. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And thank you, Dakota, for being here. Of course, this is the the Resilient Living podcast. And Jared is not with us today, but he runs resilientliving.com. So that's living, but without the G. And so you can find his information there. He runs an awesome shop between Spencer and Sparta. And if you're in that area, you really should stop by. It's a really cool shop. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Dakota, for joining us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.